So what's up, guys? Welcome back to Photo Conversations, where we have conversations about photography, film, and so much more about life. When I was starting out as a photographer and filmmaker, one of the most memorable piece of advice that I got from creatives, photographers, and filmmakers that had been there before me was specialization. Most people advised me to specialize, and indeed, I took up the whole idea and approach of specialization. I took it up by heart, and when you look at my previous branding, maybe 6-7 years ago, was driven by specialization. I was solely a documentary photographer. I'd started my career as a jack of all trades. I could do weddings, I could do portraits, studio portraits, nature, sports, and mention it. I could do all of it. But then as the years moved on, with the advice that I kept getting from different creatives and professionals, it all gravitated towards specialization. And the idea was pick one niche, refine your skills in that particular niche, build a network around that niche, and then charge a premium for that particular niche. That approach actually worked in the earlier days for me because because organizations, commercial entities, and individuals at that time had a budget that could facilitate, that could pay for services of a specialist. And I would also say that one of the things that contributed to the availability of a budget that could pay for the services of a specialist is the emergence of social media. I would say 10 years ago, social media was really not new, but in Uganda, it was just starting to emerge. And that's when, companies and organizations started to pick up social media as a real thing. And that meant that content in form of videos and photographs was so much on demand. So companies and organizations were willing to pay for, the services of a specialized photographer, maybe a documentary photographer, maybe a medical photographer who does, takes photographs in a hospital, maybe different specialties. So there was a budget for that. And I think also the other thing that kind of boosted the need for photographers who were specializing in particular niches was, still related to social media, but this was more like web design. There were so many organizations and companies that were investing money in building nice websites that were representative of their branding, that showed the work that they do. And most of the content that was going to be uploaded on these websites was either photographs or videos or video reels, and maybe graphics. So there was definitely a huge need for photographers that specialize in different things, things like food. There were restaurants that the high-end restaurants that wanted like particular kind of photography, and I would say creatives at that time actually benefited so much because businesses and organizations were willing to spend money on photography and on videography, and not just that, they wanted to work with specialists who knew exactly what they were doing. So basically the market was ripe for specialization, and I would say if somebody didn't take advantage of that era of specializations, they really missed out big. However, something else comes into play after the whole specialization in photography and filming. Something else comes into play, and this was the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the globe, and that changed everything. And how did it change everything? Eventually, because of the different economies around the world being hit by the pandemic, we had companies and organizations cut down on funding on different elements of their businesses. simply, to be able to survive and stay afloat during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that meant that photography and filmmaking was, the last thing that a business owner or an organization would think about, in such an emergency. Organizations and other companies were paying for, maybe we're paying for the most crucial elements of their companies and their businesses, maybe rent, maybe space, internet. At that time, internet was really big, and live streaming, and there were so many other softwares. The softwares that came up for group meetings, webinars, live streaming, and all of that. So companies were mainly focused on different crucial elements of their businesses, and that meant that photography and filmmaking and other forms of imagery were not a priority for organizations. And what did that cause? That meant that there were few gigs, few jobs for creatives, especially photographers and filmmakers. So being creatives, we all know that creatives will, in one way or the other, will always find a solution to a problem. So eventually, in a way to sustain themselves, creatives, photographers, filmmakers, editors, kind of decided to take on other niches that they were not, that they had not specialized in, just to get by, just to be able to make, to earn a living, or get a few shillings or dollars here and there to survive through the pandemic. It was originally sort of an emergency response mechanism for a creative to be like, what? I need to go away from specialization, because right now nobody's looking for a specialized photographer or filmmaker. But if there's an opportunity for me to do some editing for a certain fee, I don't mind doing it, because probably I have a little bit of a skill, or I have the equipment. So we saw many photographers moving away from their niches and going into closely connected niches or closely related niches. You'd find a guy who was doing wildlife, maybe is called to do a birthday, and is like, what, I have the equipment, then why not go and, take this job and make some money off of it. So we all thought, this was a temporary thing, that creatives now moving away from the rigidity of I'm a wildlife photographer, so I can't shoot a birthday. And I remember at that time most people used to host birthdays within enclosed spaces, and you'd have to jump on a border that was also looking out for police, to make sure that you reach the place you're going to safely. So basically it was an emergency response for any creative to be like, I don't do editing, but since I have the machine here at home, then I can actually do for you, so you can pay me. So that is now a background of how we eventually now slide into generalization without knowing. So fast forward, eventually the COVID-19 pandemic kind of fizzles out, and the economy is opened, and we are all expectant, we're all very hopeful and optimistic about the future for creatives. We are going to go back to work and make money. Unfortunately, the minds of the clientele, the organizations that we were working for during that time, on a generalization kind of basis, where you would be doing photography and also doing videography and also editing, these organizations realized something that could actually help them save on their meager budgets, on their on their shrunk budgets. And this was, they noticed that a creative, or let's say photographer, filmmaker, could actually provide more than one product, sort of like an assortment of different products, could take maybe pictures, then also make a video reel here, edit something over there. And clients after COVID-19, after realizing that, they decided to take advantage of it. So when a photographer or filmmaker would go to ask for to bid for a job, the question would be, can you do photography and videography and edit and do this whole list of things? And the problem was that the money that you'd be paid, or the price for that, would still be the same price that they would pay a specialist to do just one single thing, or produce one single product. So one would say, it would be easy to resist and say, what, I'll go back to my specialization and still charge the same amount of money. True to it, that would be a good idea. But the thing is, when a market or when an industry realizes something collectively and then decides, to make it the norm, even when you resist, chances are that the next client or the next person you're going to work for, because of the sentiment or the opinion in the market, they're all going to want, they're also all going to want that new trend. And eventually, before you know it, the entire industry is demanding the same thing, and you're left with no option but rather to flow with the flow. And I think it's not fair for a creative to be paid the same amount that he would have gotten as a specialist. But on the contrary, in this situation, he's doing more than one thing. He's doing videography, photography, live streaming, and all these things. I think it's not fair. However, the market and the industry doesn't care about fairness. It is an issue of supply and demand. If the supply increases, then eventually the demand drops, and vice versa. So that was what happened after COVID-19. And I would speak for myself. I kind of tried to adapt to the new market where, I would go as a photographer and I wouldn't mind to make a short video here and there. I sort of accepted it. But much as I accepted it, I was thinking of how then do I take advantage of this new demand for a multi-talented, multitasking photographer, filmmaker, editor, and all of these things. Fortunately enough, I took my time to learn most of these things. I could do a little bit of editing, I could do a little bit of filming, could do a little bit of photography, I could do a little bit of sound. And so basically, I would say I was a versatile creative at the time. But then I didn't want to be paid the same amount that a specialist would be paid to do one thing. I did not resist, but I adapted, but then came up with my own solution of how to kind of make ends meet without breaking my back. And for me, one of the things that I realized is when your competitive advantage shifts, you also need to look for something else that becomes a competitive advantage, and that should help you increase your value and demand a higher price for whatever you're offering. So that's what came to mind for me. So I kept on looking for the competitive advantage that I would have. And one of the things that I won't say that this is something that I came up with or something that I planned or whatever, but I would say from working or through experience from working continuously with different organizations, different businesses, I realized that much as they no longer want specialists, they want a jack of all trades so that they could take advantage. I also realized that there is need for capacity, production, and in this case, I mean production capacity. And capacity in this sense is becomes needed because organizations and businesses grow naturally. It's natural for a business to move from maybe one room to 2 rooms, to move from one product to another product. So there was expansion in the different elements of the businesses, and that demanded also a corresponding expansion or increase in capacity in terms of the filming, in terms of the media, in terms of the kind of work that we do as creatives. And I noticed that companies began to hire people based on capacity. Can Watanda Photography be able to maybe to cover an event that is inviting 1,000 people? Can Watanda be able to maybe, because we have 2 different sets in 2 different rooms, can Watanda be able to live stream these 2 events simultaneously? And then, so as I continue to work, I realize capacity now for me has become, the new competitive advantage. And it's easy for someone to hire you simply because of that. This guy has more capacity, can do more. And we all know that businesses will always act rationally and logically, because for them it's about profit, it's about maximizing their gains while minimizing, their expenditures. So in any case, much as you might be the best photographer, the best creative, at the end of the day, the organizations are looking to minimize expenditures while maximizing their gains. So we need to understand that organizations think and operate in a more rational manner. And that means you as a photographer and filmmaker, you need to also respond in a rational manner while you transact business with these organizations and companies and individuals. So for me, I would say one of the things I thought about was, as a competitive advantage, was production capacity. But what is production capacity? So for me, production capacity is basically the ability for a creative or filmmaker, photographer, editor to scale up their service to the need of the client. And this capacity can be scaled up in different forms based on what the job is. You could scale up capacity by simply having a larger team. You could scale up capacity by having more equipment. You could scale up your capacity based on time. You could probably work longer. You could probably maybe stay in the field longer than another person, simply because you have the means to stay there. So capacity can be expanded and scaled up from different aspects of your own business. So those 3 are very important: scaling up in terms of equipment, scaling up in terms of human resource, scaling up in terms of the time and the period of the work that you're able to do. It could even be logistics. You might be a good photographer, but do you have the capacity, to run, to traverse the entire country in a week? So you would need a better and more efficient logistics plan and logistics capacity to be able to get certain kinds of job. It might even be financing. You might be able to get the job, but do you have the financial capacity to do this job on your own and be paid later? So these are things that I started to realize, that eventually clients start to look at these things other than the quality of the work you're producing. And this does not exonerate you from the quality requirement from organizations. I would say for me right now, quality should no longer be something that you think of as a competitive advantage, because then if you're not producing quality, then you're basically you're not part of the industry. Quality actually should come as a prerequisite, or should become as a preliminary before you take up any gig. So let's imagine that Watanda has quality, another person has quality, then what what differentiates the two of you, such that a rational decision can be made by a finance manager in an organization to hire you. So, and the other thing we actually need to understand is that the people that hire photographers and filmmakers sometimes are not creatives, and for them, they are looking at, bare bones, dry parameters to be able to hire you. They're looking at your things like, okay, what is the capacity he has in terms of his team? What is his capacity in terms of equipment, in terms of time, in terms of all these things? So for me, that's the realization when you see. I would say for me that that is how I kind of analyze the whole situation of the creator economy, the multimedia space. So for me, this video is just really my own view but my basic analysis of what the industry looks like right now. And I would say I would encourage photographers and filmmakers to kind of scale up their capacity in different ways. And sometimes collaboration can also be one thing to scale up if you do not have these resources, at hand, and then a job shows up, you collaborate and be able to scale up. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. And I would say scale up capacity. And by the way, the other thing that you can also scale up is knowledge. People do not look at knowledge as scalable, but it is scalable. You learn new things. For example, one of the things that I've decided to try and scale up in is podcasting. Podcasting is actually one of the things that taught me that scalability is a very important thing. And here is how I got to know. So I all know I've started a small podcasting business, and in this business, usually the amount of equipment and the type of equipment you're going to have is going to be based on the number of people that are going to sit in on this podcast. So I started by buying, a few cameras and a few mics, and my capacity at that time would sit about two people conversation. And I was like, okay, now this is good. But guess what? Then I start to get people who want 3, 4, 5 people conversations. So that got me thinking, okay, that means now I can miss out on a gig simply because I am not able to fulfill the needs of a person or a company, simply because I do not have the capacity to shoot the number of people he wants. You all know the different camera angles that come with shooting podcasts. And I'll tell you something interesting. You might think, man, I have 3 cameras, I'm good to go. But guess what? Each camera is going to need a tripod, and a high quality tripod. Each camera is going to need a lens on it. Each camera might need an external monitor, an HDMI, different microphones. Before you know it, you're running on a very huge budget. Let's say, for example, you are hiring equipment just to get this job, and before you know it, you can't break even. So for me, podcasting is one of the things that actually helped me to learn about scalability and increasing my capacity in order to be able to serve the needs of my clients. So photographers and filmmakers, let's move away from quality, because quality is a must. It is expected. If you're still going out and saying, okay, I have the best photos, I think we are in different rooms or different realms. Right now, you would be thinking of, okay, besides quality, because quality should be a must, what else can I offer? And maybe you could share your comments in the comment section and share maybe other ways that I've not talked about in which we can scale up our production businesses and be able to take advantage of the new economy, the new creative industry. So thank you so much for watching this YouTube video, and I hope to see you on the next one. Subscribe if you feel this information is important to you, and ring the bell button to be able to get enough and ring the bell button to get notified about our new content. Thank you so much for watching, and catch you on the next one. Cheers.